Good morning and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. Wherever you are scattered across this earth, it's hashtag Christian Straight Talk. It is Thursday morning, the 23rd of November, and it's roughly just 11:15 here within the UK. We hope you are well in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. We have got a lovely brother, Brian Greenaway. Obviously, Simon sitting opposite me, hashtag Christian Straight Talk. We're going to have an update. We're going to listen and see what's coming through the airwaves from Israel and from our lovely brother, Brian. There's so much going on across the world. Brian, it's great to see you this morning, my friend.
Good to be here, Ben.
It's lovely to have you with us, and it's Simon.
It's great to be back, yeah. And just off air in the preamble, because we've just finished a podcast all about the wonderful prophet Elijah. And just Brian sat down and I spoke to him about it. And Brian, tell us about Elijah, because he's a big character in the Jewish faith, isn't he?
Yeah, Elijah the Tishbite.
Yeah.
Appeared from nowhere, one of the speaking prophets as opposed to the writing prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah. So never, as far as we know, wrote anything himself, but the history of his appearance, dramatic pronouncement of loyalty to God and challenging the prophets, then great discouragement, which a lot of us face, yet restored in a certain sense by God, isn't it? And he's, a friendly uncle to many Jewish people.
And that's how they call it, a friendly uncle.
Well, they say that, but for those of you who are familiar with the most important annual event for Jewish people, is Passover.
Yes.
It's called Passover. And part of the Passover Seder, which means order, is that you have the cup of Elijah. And so right at the end of the Passover, the children are told to go and look, because the Bible says, doesn't it, that before the coming of the Messiah will be the time of Elijah. It speaks about the prophet like Elijah who comes and announces the Messiah. So that's why you have that at Passover, because they're told to go and look at the door, open the door, and see if Elijah's come yet to announce the Messiah. That's why they have that. Wow. So, because it's fun for the children, they open the door, there's no one there.
There's no one there.
One day,
but it's so powerful, isn't it, how the Old Testament links the new, that all runs together, and as we know, there's no separation and all that sort of stuff. But we was just talking, weren't we? We had that great podcast about Elijah, and suddenly this conversation. But at the Passover table, there is an empty chair.
Yeah, and the cup of Elijah as well, the cup which he has to come and drink from to announce the coming of the Messiah. That's the part of the Passover that's there, looking forward to the future. Obviously, from a Jewish point of view, they're waiting for the Messiah to come.
They're waiting.
We as believers in Jesus know he's already come. He's going to come a second time. Yeah. So he's already come and announced the Messiah. It was John the Baptist. John the Baptist came in the power and spirit and power of the Elijah. And then, of course, he appears at the other very important event in Jewish culture is circumcision. Every child is circumcised on the 8th day. And there's a chair. The chair of Elijah is there.
Yeah,
Wow.
Do you know what that is? It's because, of course, Elijah, at one point, when he was very discouraged, he ran from Jezebel. Yeah. And he said, there's only me. I'm the only one.
It's exactly, Brian, what you just saying.
I might as well die. And God says, you're not that important, Elijah. There are 7,000 other people.
Do you know what? That is so good, isn't it? It's just keying into what we've been saying about
it's right on the back of what we just said.
7,000 remnant. So we're not alone.
No, we're not alone. We're never alone.
No.
And so he has to witness that now. It's almost, Elijah is called back at Passover and at circumcision, so every baby boy that's born, he's come back to witness. God has said, see, we're still here.
Oh, yeah.
Thousands of years later, we are still here.
Yeah. Wow.
2,500 years later, we're still here. It's circumcision to prove it as a baby boy, Jewish boy, and here is Passover.
Absolutely mind-blowing.
Wonderful, isn't it? The tradition.
That's why I love talking with Brian and just listening when he brings the feasts out and he brings everything out, and it's just like light bulbs going on in my head.
Well, because there's a history that links with the Bible, isn't there? With everything.
It's so good.
Yeah, and also, Brian, I guess as you're standing, you celebrate both the Christians and the Jewish. So every day must be a holiday, mate, for you. You've got Hanukkah coming up soon.
That's right. Hanukkah's a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah.
Right. Quickly, Hanukkah.
Yep.
What are we going to do? What are they going to do? What's going on with that?
Hanukkah's fun. It's 8 days of presents, really, for children. It's longer than Christmas.
So it's 8 days. 8 days of presents.
Do you have to light candles and all that?
So there are 8 candles, lighting 1 candle every day. Do you want to do potted history of Hanukkah? So
come on.
That goes in the window, doesn't it, Brian?
It does go in the window to prove that the light still shines for the Jewish people. And
is that menorah? Is that where
it's called a Hanukkiah.
A Hanukkiah?
So it has 9 candles.
Yeah.
8 of them are lit 8 days in succession, and the extra candle called the shamesh, or the slave candle, is the candle you use to light those other
like
candles.
the others.
Like the others. That's what the candle in the centre or at the end is for. And so if you look in the book of Maccabees, which of course is between the two testaments, the first and the apostolic scriptures, the book of Maccabees is not a book of the Bible, historical book, but it tells the story of the Maccabees who rebelled against the Greek Empire that was ruling in Israel at that time. And they threw off Greek rule against overwhelming odds, a massive army. This was like a ragtag rebels. And then they recaptured Jerusalem, recaptured the temple, and wanted to relight the giant menorah. They didn't have any oil, and it takes 8 days to prepare the oil. So they found a little bit of oil. This is legend, okay? It's not in the Bible. This is legend, but it's good one. It's a good one. They found a little bit of oil, and they lit the menorah, and it lit for 8 days. It didn't burn down.
And just that little bit of oil.
That little bit of oil. That's the legend of thing. But what we celebrate is the throwing off of Greek rule. The empire that was ruling.
Right.
So that's what the celebration is about. Freedom, Jewish freedom.
Freedom.
Yeah. And if you think about it, from when the Maccabees threw off Greek rule until when the Romans came and took over, that was the only time of Jewish freedom since before 586 BC and until 1948, because they were ruled by somebody occupied. Israel. You talk about occupation. Israel's been occupied since the Romans right the way through.
They have, haven't they?
Yeah, they have.
And these days, obviously, Israel is very much in the spotlight. But if you see historians, they'll go, let's give you the history of Israel. They start in 1948, don't they?
Yeah, they do. It's tragic, isn't it?
It's nonsense, isn't it? Because we're going back, thousands of years, aren't we?
Yeah.
I can't believe, I do believe, since we've been talking about Israel, and Brian's been amongst us for many, many years as well, but since what's going on within Israel and just everything that's happening, everywhere I read, I'm starting to see Israel. It's popping up like every almost scripture I go to, there's a reference about Israel. It is so biblically needed, isn't it, for the church in the UK?
It's fundamental to our faith.
It is.
You couldn't have one. This is where Christ came from, So it's our faith, isn't it? So for anyone, I mean, there's a big trend now, really, to move on from the Old Testament and just embrace the New Covenant, isn't it? And you're missing out so much, aren't you, Brian?
Of course, yeah.
Give me oil in my lamp, keep me burning. As soon as Brian was starting to talk about that, I started to sing that in the back of my head. That old song.
That's all there, isn't it?
It's all there, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
It's all there. Brian, I just want to quickly backtrack a little bit before we press into the updates. I had a conversation the other day with a guy that's really close to me, and we was just talking about replacement theology. Could you confirm to a degree what denomination that really presses that more than anything? Are you able to say that at this moment in time?
Well, the thing is, it's not. I don't think you would ever say it was one.
Okay.
It's in a fundamental doctrine of any denomination. Some are more than others. It is often down to the individual church. But the problem is that hundreds and hundreds of years of replacement theology has sort of made it the DNA of the British church.
Agreed.
That's the problem. And so they don't, it's an ignorance, and I say that in a nice way.
Yes.
There's an ignorance in churches. People don't even understand at all. They think, what's Israel got to do with us today? And, you hear comments from people, and, and the comment I heard the other day, somebody said, why do we have to be so Old Testament about this? Which is almost saying that the Old Testament is it's a different God.
Separate,
which is the argument of the atheist. If you listen to Richard Dawkins, he says, you look at in the Old Testament, it's all these people being killed. God says, kill this person. He said, then Jesus comes along and makes it all nice. So he says, he sees it as a wrong teaching that there's a different God in the Old Testament. But there isn't a different God.
Isn't.
But replacement theology, supersessionism.
It's still alive and well, isn't it?
Theology, all these big words.
All these big words I can't even...
all that, don't they?
Yeah,
they love
that.
They
love the big words. They really do.
Yeah.
So the British church, the UK church, is pretty biblically illiterate, isn't it? We're very respectful. We all know what we're getting at. So we know that your phone has probably gone quite a little bit quieter since all this has been breaking out. Do you think the UK church is quite frightened of literally lifting the voice of itself, individually, denominational-wise, all of us, Do you think there's a bit of a fear thread running through the English church of going, if I identify myself as a Bible-believing believer, I stand with the biblical Israel, I could become a bit of a target? Do you think that could be possible that's hanging around? Are you busy?
In one way, yes, and in one way, no. Because we, as some of our listeners may know, we raise money for our projects in Israel.
Yeah.
And so over the last 2 months, we've seen an incredible rise in income. In fact,
really?
Our best month ever this month.
Oh, wow.
For our projects and the things in Israel, because there are lots of believers who stand with Israel.
Praise God.
Including churches.
But are they individual believers?
Mainly, and churches as well.
Yeah.
Those who will stand with Israel. But you're right. I think the majority of churches don't know how to deal with it because they don't have the right theology. They don't have the understanding. And what they think is, if I'm going to stand with Israel, then I'm going to support everything they do. And of course, then you get to think, well, no, actually, you have a political entity called Israel at the moment.
Yeah.
And yes, there is standing with them is right at this time because they've been attacked by terrorists, and that needs to be recognised. Horrendous terrorism that we'd never seen. And so everybody needs to condemn that terrorism and recognise the right of Israel as a political entity to defend themselves. That's right. Anybody would see that, and our government is doing quite well. But then it's but then a lot of churches don't know how to handle it. And, the biblical Israel, the promises of Israel, the covenants with Israel, they don't understand them, so they don't know where to go from them. They don't know how to handle it from the pulpit.
That is tragic. For me, that's absolutely tragic because whether you like it or not, it doesn't matter what you think, but Israel, they're still God's people.
Yeah.
They were then and they are today. And as you quite rightly said, God is the same yesterday, today and forever. These are God's people.
Amen.
These are God's people. Now, if you don't recognise that, then really, where do you stand? Because God will defend his people and he will do. He'll raise them up. However he has to do it, he'll do it. And if you're not with them, then there's no sitting on the fence here.
No, it's not there.
Because the enemy owns the fence.
He does.
And you get splinters, don't you? So you've got to choose one way or the other.
Scripture's very clear, isn't it?
It's very clear, like you're saying, you've got to choose today. Who are you going to serve? Are you for me or against me? Are you standing in my camp or are you standing in the world's camp? So when we're hearing all this, Brian, all I'm hearing is so much political table tennis between all the nations. Has anybody actually stepped into the arena with Israel and gone, we are going to stand with you, and we're actually watching it visually? Because I know there's a lot of voice. Is there any nation that has actually jumped in and partnered with them physically that you can identify with, or Israel still on their own? No,
America's been very good. They've sent, I think 2 of their carrier fleets into the Mediterranean, and they've been, because the Houthi rebels have been firing cruise missiles at Israel to Eilat, that area. So the Americans have been taking a couple of those down and helping with that side of things. And also their very presence there, I think, because Iran has recently said, we're not going to support Hamas in this. Because Iran are scared. They're scared of America. America could take them out.
I was gonna bring that into the combo. Do you think a lot of the surrounding nations possibly could be looking into it as this Bible might be true, and if we intervene as other nations, because when you look at other faiths, they're pretty clued up with the Gospels and the Old Testament, aren't they? They're pretty well on it. And I wonder if a lot of these leaders in these massive nations, these Muslim areas, are just not going in as they said, because they might be thinking it actually could be true what the Bible says. And we are living in very powerful end days.
Well, I have a slightly different take on it. That not all Muslims are the same, are they?
No.
And you've got different.
Okay.
And also, I look at a lot of American politics, and whilst yes, they're supporting Israel from one stance, they're also supporting Iran. They've taken off all the shackles that were on Iran, and Iran is now being able to sell all that oil to China, and they've released billions of dollars, which are funding the terrorism. So on the one hand, on the other hand, you've got them sort of kind of supporting Iran, and Obama had a strange very strange policy of he thought if we strengthen Iran, then and make Israel weaker, then in the Middle East there'll be more peace in the Middle East. It's a complete and utter misunderstanding. Because when Trump was in and Iran was shackled, you didn't get any of this problems, did you? Do you know? So yeah. I mean, we see it a lot. Yeah, they put a couple of carriers in there, and because they've been attacked. You know, the Americans have had 40-odd attacks on their places in Syria and all around. Yeah. But it's true. You've got this little thumbnail, haven't you, right in the middle of all these massive big.
And the world is watching.
There's been a lot of saber rattling, hasn't there? There's been a lot of Erdogan in Turkey is shouting about, and he sees himself as the king of the Muslim world.
He wants the head of the caliphate.
That's
it. He wants to be. Yeah.
He's trouble.
Yeah.
He is. Yeah,
he's trouble.
And since he did that fake coup and took over the country,
how'd they get away with
it? It's not good, that whole thing. And I mean, it's interesting because there are some European nations, like Germany has been good. You know, there was a conference recently with Muslims, Jews, Christians together, and one of the senior German politicians was there, and she said, "I want to hear Muslims condemning the attack."
Wow!
She put that on the line. She said, "If you're going to be a German citizen." There are 5.5 million Muslims in Germany. Half of them have German citizenship. She said, "You've got to condemn terrorism. It's part of being a German citizen."
Yes.
We've seen some good things in European countries, but I think with the nations surrounding Israel, firstly, they've lost so many times before, miraculously, and they're thinking, we've lost wars against Israel in the past, we don't want another one. And secondly, there are a lot of Muslims who want peace, aren't they?
It's very true, isn't it? Humanity. We just want to go to work,
that's right,
pay the bills, and just be peaceable. But there is a political stirring, but also what we can't escape is this biblical drive that we are seeing very clearly where we sit. What do you think is going on with this ceasefire then? Do you reckon...
Well, it's been put back 24 hours.
Yeah.
So it starts tomorrow at 10 a.m. Israel time, 8 a.m. our time. It's very mixed emotions. I mean, when you've got lots... let's face it, the ones that are going to be released are children and babies. Old people, one of whom has died because she wasn't given treatment already.
Didn't she? Yeah.
These people shouldn't be hostages. You talk about hostages, not that there's ever the legitimacy for hostages.
No, but
children and babies.
The hostages have been forgotten about, Brian, in all of this. They have got. It's literally hundreds, isn't it? It's hundreds.
It's so frightening, isn't it, to think what they're using as human shields, using them as weapons in warfare. I can't. My mind is actually really troubling me, and I feel really selfish.
There was an older lady. She was released a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
And she shook the hand and they made a big political statement out of that. It couldn't have been so bad for her because hold on a minute. What a marvellous thing of forgiveness she did that. You know.
I tell you what,
the whole thing sort of really wants to shake people because. The majority, I guarantee you, Brian, the majority of people who are marching and shouting out "Free Palestine" don't even know where Palestine is.
No, that's right. No. And they talk about occupation, and you say, "Where is the occupation?"
Yeah, where?
Where is Israel occupying Gaza? There's no Israel. There are now. There were before the October 7th. There were no Israelis in Gaza.
But the most ridiculous thing is you've got girls dressed how they're dressed over there. Oh, yeah. You've got gays, queers for Palestine, who'd be slung off a multi-story car park or something, because that's happened. It's crazy, but
there are many people that will march. This week they'll march for Palestine. Next week they'll march for Save the Planet, won't they? You can see a lot of it. But
we used to, I mean, a lot of them are younger people who have been indoctrinated from schooling and college and stuff like that. Yeah, and we used to, when I was in the police, we used to see all that. We used to call them the Great Unwashed. They'd turn out for everything that's anti,
anti-establishment. Any anti,
rent
a mob.
Them at the poll tax, right? We had them, all of them.
Brian, you was up there, London. You was in London, weren't you?
Yes,
Weekend.
On Sunday night. That's
you
right,
was marching.
Well, we wasn't marching or protesting. We were praying.
There's a big difference.
and it was really good-natured. So there was about between 7,000 and 8,000 Jewish community and Christians together. It was arranged by my good friend Tim and Hayley Gutman, who are the pastors of the Assemblies of God Church in Lee Valley, and they run an organisation called Christian Action Against Anti-Semitism. So that's CAAA.info. That's their website, and they worked with the Jewish community on arranging this joint event. So it was really lovely. It was a little bit of a delay because there were some problems with getting bits and pieces in, but it was opposite Downing Street. It was called Richmond Terrace, right on Whitehall.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of police protection. The whole of Whitehall was full of police.
We was going to ask that.
A massive line of police officers, not because we're doing anything, to protect us, because they were worried about us being attacked.
Did you feel safe?
Absolutely safe, yeah.
Where did you start from?
So it started about at 4:30. Stayed in the same place.
So
we had a stage.
You all met at this one place?
We all met at one place, yeah. There were Iranians there as well.
Really?
From Free Iran.
Interesting, isn't it, Simon?
Yeah.
There was Kurdish people there as well. There was an LGBT Jewish people as well, because they want freedom. So it was a mixture of people together. It wasn't a Christian event, but we did pray, and we had various speakers from Christian organisations in the UK and from Jewish organisations as well, just saying that we stand with the Jewish community and we stand against anti-Semitism. There were some Muslim people with us as well.
Because Brian, this has really triggered, and it shocked me as the depth of anti-Semitism that has actually come out.
Yeah,
so it was always there, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was always there, wasn't it? The root of it.
Yeah. And you had, especially in the States and places, you had major Jewish donors to major Harvard and places like pulling. They pull in there because what they see and what they've seen is young Jewish students getting attacked.
They are. It's really scary, some of the stuff we've seen. And in the UK as well, there's a terrible precedent here because I know someone who is a student in Germany at university, and she's a student in the Centre for Jewish Studies in her university, which also has the Centre for Islamic Studies, which is much bigger. Now there was a stand of solidarity with the Jewish students, but they were unfortunately attacked by the Islamic students, had to be protected by the police. So the dean of the university said, we've got a solution for this. All the Jewish studies will now go online. So we'll shut that down and you'll go online. Aren't we helping you? But as she pointed out, in the 1930s, one of the first things the Nazis did was to get rid of all Jewish influence in universities, colleges and schools. And so it's a pattern emerging. So they refused to go because they said, we see another pattern from the 30s where Jewish people are being run. And I've seen in the press today that the universities in Israel are having massive uptake in Jewish students from across the world who want to study in Israel because they're not safe in British, European, American universities. They're just not safe.
It's really sad, isn't it? They're not safe.
No,
definitely not safe. Yeah.
In the States, it's horrendous. All the top Ivy League universities, donors are Jewish donors are pulling money like there's no, pulling support like there's no tomorrow. Yeah. It's just it's really just sitting back and watching what's going on. So, what about our good friends over in Israel, our Christian brothers and sisters who are on the front line? Do we hear much about that, Brian?
Yeah. I mean, we know. I think I told you previously. We had one that was killed. One who had his legs blown off in an armoured vehicle.
Wow.
So 2 believers we know that were one died, one is injured. Many are serving in the front line still, protecting their country, dealing with terrorism, and the rest of the sort of believing community is running around, as most of Israel are, serving in sort of civil defence roles, delivering food, helping those in need, etc., helping refugees. A lot of pressure, but then a lot of people who have come from overseas as well. Jewish people have come home.
Flooding back.
Yeah, they are.
They're flooding back.
Yeah, so what we don't hear about much, we hear about a lot of people in Gaza, refugees. We don't hear about the Israeli refugees, do we?
Hundreds of thousands of Israeli refugees. There are.
Hundreds of thousands.
Some hotels have helped out. There was a chap who's a Bedouin. Get the image of Bedouin with the tents.
Yeah.
Well, this guy owns a complex of hotels. He's a wealthy guy. And because Bedouin were killed by the terrorists as well. including the son of a prince, and that's caused a bit of a blood feud. But anyway, putting that aside, we may come back to it. So he opened his hotels for refugees, and but it's still a problem. So we, as Maoz, we are funding 2 projects. One is a temporary school in Nazareth. So many refugees came from the north, and one of our representatives visited this group in a hotel. So they had kids there right up to age 11, no education anymore, no equipment. So we're paying for a lot of equipment so they can be taught and these activities. And then in Ra'anana, central Israel, we are paying for the rebuilding or the building of a new school, because obviously they can't go to the south or north anymore because they're excluded because of the evacuation. So we're helping for the building of a school as well, trying to raise $250,000 by the end of the year.
And how can
so they can have education?
How can the listeners and everybody get hold of you and put some money, a few quid in the bank? What's the best way for anybody that's listening? Because there's literally a lot of people listening. How do we help as humanity? What do we do?
So we'll go to our website. Yeah. Maoz Israel, MAOZ, maozisrael.uk. Yeah. And there's also Maoz Israel, if you're in the States or somewhere, maozisrael.org.
Yes.
And you'll see our website there. People are donating towards the school fund. So we can get these kids.
What a great thing to do. Get the kids back to education.
And one of the key things is trauma. A lot of kids are suffering trauma, as you'd understand.
So these are not just Christian kids, are they?
No.
Across the
anybody in need.
Anybody.
Children.
They're Jewish kids, Arab kids. Yeah. Whoever needs help, we're helping.
Fantastic.
It's amazing stories what's going on. We don't hear all this, do we, on the old BBC and the old Sky and all that sort of stuff. So you mentioned trauma. Now, there's that word that's been rattling around in certain areas I've worked in, well-being. I'm fed up with that word of well-being. And also we've got another word that's been rattling, mental health issues. Right? We all know that and so much going on. So when we look at real trauma, these children have seen the most horrific things that anyone could ever. And there will be children that have escaped the line of the sword. They would have got away. How are you helping in any way as the ministry to build these lives up? You're doing great work with the schools and all that sort of stuff. Is there anything where the children are wrapped up and they're taken in, where they've lost mums and dads and brothers and sisters? What happens to the children when they've lost their family? What happens?
Well, it's a real collective trauma at the moment. And one of the big issues was that the terrorists took the phones off of the bodies of people they'd killed or tortured or kidnapped and used their social media channels to share what they were doing. So Instagram,
sharing,
all over.
So it spread. So that's why the Israeli government said, please shut down your social media. Do not share things. But sadly, young children in playgrounds and everywhere saw some of the worst of the atrocities. And so that's caused a great deal of fear. Children not eating properly, children not sleeping. And so it's a collective thing. It's not just us, it's others. We're obviously helping with the school. And as the days go on, because the immediate needs we're meeting now, which is food and clothing and places to live, that's where a lot of people are involved in. Of course, as this war goes on, as the war comes to an end, we think it will last about a year, there will be a great need, and we will become involved in helping with counselling and trauma and all the things it's going to mean. It's going to be a big thing. It's going to be a lot of people.
It's going to blow the lid off it, isn't it? Because you've got these.
It's an amazing organisation.
When you really think about some of the things that are going on, and you look at what we're doing in the church, and you think, oh my goodness.
Well, we don't know the
they're
true
all
story,
fluffy and puffy
not
here, aren't
given the true story. Brian, is there hope? There's always hope, isn't there?
There's always hope, isn't there?
Yeah.
If you read the book of Micah, for example, the book of Micah gives you that whole history of Israel. Really, it tells you about the coming of the king, the Messiah, the Davidic covenant, all that side. But it does talk about a time of disobedience where Israel will come through a time of difficulty, where they're being prepared to be that nation that in the end it's the centre of the world now, becomes the real centre of the world. So there is that hope. We know that in the end God will redeem Israel, God will pour out his spirit on them, even through trial, and they will be the nation that he always called them to be. So when God is on the throne, and he is, there is always hope. We know the end of the story, don't we? We know it.
Yeah.
But there'll be tough times ahead.
Is this the biggest battle that Israel has ever faced, do you think? Is Is it what sort of level are we looking at this moment? Because like we were saying earlier, the news channels seem to be going on to the next thing like it always does. The world is moving on.
I listened to Netanyahu, he was on Mark Levin, which is a guy on Fox News, and he was saying, imagine if America proportionately had the same thing happen to them, it would be literally thousands and thousands and thousands of people would have been killed. Thousands of people, the world would have been absolutely
an uproar.
Yeah, yeah. So, where do we, where do we go? I think is and right now maybe we can't see the wood for the trees, can we? Because we've got it. We're there, and is that scripture? Is that in Micah where it says, "Rejoice not over me, my enemy, for I shall arise." I use that quite often, I think it's in Micah somewhere. So don't rejoice because Israel's coming. Israel will arise because we are that we're standing with Israel because we are God's people. Aren't we?
Well, the Bible tells us. In the Torah, it tells us that we shouldn't rejoice over the death of our enemies.
No.
So Israel never rejoices over that.
No, of course.
And it's interesting because the scriptures do talk about what is God's responsibility. And God said that he will destroy those who come against Israel.
I read that last night.
That's a risky thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a risky thing.
I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you.
And that's why...
100%, Brian. That should frighten the life out of
anyone.
Any
and that's why I wonder. Yeah, that's why I wonder if you're talking about denominations and what we mentioned earlier about other faiths. Are they further on in what we understand in this biblical faith that we've got, looking in and thinking, well, actually, I've heard a scripture of old that says if anyone comes against Israel, you're coming against God. And I wonder if there is this spiritual drive as well, where God is working in every area, and a lot of these nations are holding back because they are thinking, if this is true, I'm coming against this God. As a nation, we are going to be coming, and I wonder if they're sitting back and
maybe consciously it's not a spiritual thing for them because obviously, but maybe politically
a trade deal.
Yeah, but so we were talking a bit about off air about the Abraham Accords, which was like the Muslim. Christian, I guess, and Jewish, all under Abraham, which is called the Abraham Accords, which was started a few years ago by Trump and whatever. So, do you want to tell us a bit about that? Because people like the Sultan of Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, they're all standing pretty much with Israel, aren't they? They're saying this accord is going forward, and from my understanding, I think Iran really. This shook Iran up a little bit, and that's why one of the main reasons why the terrorists were sent in.
It was. So the Abraham Accords are good. It's come from Trump, of course, and also from a change in the education system in some of these nations, because for many years in Islamic nations they have taught blood libels against Jewish people, something called the Elders of the Protocols of Zion, which is invented really by the church, sadly, about. Jewish people use the blood of Christians in their Passover, and it's an awful thing.
My goodness!
And that was part of the curriculum in many schools. But in some of those countries where the Abraham Accords apply, they took those sort of things out of the education system. So you had young Arab people, Muslim people who were growing up in a school system who weren't taught that. And so I've heard young Islamic academics say, "Oh, well, once we were taught that Israel was not an evil nation trying to destroy us, that it was a democracy, we realised that making peace is the best thing overall, not that it's easy." And so you've had a number of nations signing these Abraham Accords who just want peace. They recognise that, the geopolitical dynamics are changing. Oil is not going to be as lucrative, that's the word, in the future. So they've got to move into other areas. So really they just want peace. But of course, you're right, Simon, that Iran doesn't want peace. And they're very worried about being isolated because they're not an Arab nation, see, of course.
No.
Being isolated by all the Arab nations around them, gradually signing these accords. So they've triggered this. This is part of it. They're triggering it to try and upset, especially Saudi Arabia. That's the big prize in a certain sense, isn't it? Now, Iran and Saudi have been at each other's throats, not had diplomatic relations for many years. But now it's been brokered. China have got involved, and suddenly Saudi and Iran are talking. Everybody, come from nowhere.
Wow.
I'm surprised about that, because Iran are desperate not for Saudi to sign these accords, because they would bring an alliance of Arab nations and Israel against Iran. So you can see the geopolitical story in that. And the sad thing is, I think it's sad, from Hamas's point of view, they were thinking, Iran's going to come and help
Iran
us.
is going to come.
They've just thrown them under the bus.
Yeah.
They did.
Announced, we're not going to do anything about this. We're not coming in at a war.
Yes.
I mean, they've set Hamas up. They fund Hamas. They give them the weapons. They've encouraged them. They've made them do
Correct.
this. And then suddenly they say, we're not going to help them. They've thrown them under the bus because they've used them just for their own political ends. They've still got Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad under their control. It's just...
But it's not... it's very interesting because it's not quite working out how they thought, is it?
No.
Because you've got the Saudi and the other people coming out and going, they are terrorists.
Yeah, they are.
And these people are coming out, whereas some of our own people, some of our own politicians, Jeremy Corbyn and people like that, can't even get the word terrorist out, can they? Do you know what I mean? Freedom fighters, I mean, they call
Freedom.
it.
Our friends, I've heard our friends from Hamas, our friends from Hezbollah.
It's just like...
a couple of years back, but he still said it.
Yeah.
He hasn't taken it back.
He hasn't taken it back, no.
No.
Piers Morgan had it right.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. Are you using that to friends? You just can't. You can't believe what gets bounded around, can you?
Can't, no.
So, Brian, we've got a couple of minutes just before we go, and there is so much on the clock to talk about. We've got so much on the clock to talk about. It is so interesting, and my mind is aching with so much to... So, right, where can we find the ministry that you're in? Supporting it? Newsletters? Websites? Social networks? Give us a little rundown, Brian.
Okay, yes. So I mentioned the website earlier, maozisrael.uk. That's MAOZ, maozisrael.uk. And we also have a monthly magazine that's free, completely free of charge. And I know I brought a couple of copies with me today, which comes out every month, gives an update what's happening in Israel.
Yeah.
It talks about our projects, but it also talks about what's happening in the political scene, economic scene in Israel as well. So people can sign up to receive that report. They can receive it by email, or they can receive it by post. And it also tells people about the projects there that people can give to support. We really appreciate that. We really need support. We're also on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram as well. You've got offices across the world, offices in Germany, in South Korea, in Brazil, in the States, of course. We've got Maoz Espanol, so everything's done in Spanish. The report is in 8 different languages. Right. Maoz France has opened in the last year as well, so there's a number of offices where people make connections.
We've just got one. This is the newsletter.
That's right.
And right here, and it's just a great bit of publication, and it would be great, wouldn't it, if this was given out in churches across the land, as people. As people left the church, take one of these and really read the truth.
Do you know what, Brian? Brian said exactly, Simon. I was sniggering there because he said across the churches in the UK, the church don't even know who they are at the minute. And oh my goodness, some of the pictures, we won't talk about it, but wow, this is real life. This is frontline news, isn't it? This is not propaganda. This is real life. And what I love is you've got the map, which just helps you to see things and highlight stuff, and you've got real life pictures. And
I think we should say on this platform, really, don't listen too much to what you see on the mainstream media, the BBC and all the other CNBC, MSNBC, all the stuff in the States, because it's fueled one way, or it'll run down the middle. It won't tell the truth. Dig a bit deeper. Go onto the Maoz website. Go onto other Christian Jewish websites and look at this stuff, because this will tell you the truth of what's actually happening, and you'll get the proper picture. And it's fascinating just talking to Brian here. It's great getting him in, and it's
amazing.
We got so much. We could run for all day, really, couldn't we? Because we've got so much more to say. But we just want to thank you, Brian, for everything you're doing. You know, it really does. We
completely.
Really do, yeah. And let's hope that we can raise a standard for Maoz in the UK.
Come on, we got to. You know, it's a fantastic ministry. God is in it. God is moving through it, Brian. And like Simon had just said, everything, we really, really do appreciate you coming in. And you know, we stand with the biblical Israel and all that sort of stuff and what's going on. And you've got to be careful about the political stuff, haven't you? It's very difficult to navigate, isn't it, Brian?
It is. Yeah.
So people can find you on the social networks, you know, just very quickly, since we've been saying very loud and clear we stand with the biblical Israel, goodness gracious, you start to find out where the church actually sits and where people actually sit, and it's quite harrowing, really. So wherever you are across the world, you've been listening to Brian, Simon, myself, just having a catch-up and a chat. We'll be back very, very soon. You know how to get hold of Brian. It's #Christian Straight Talk. Simon and myself and Brian, have a wonderful day wherever you are across the world, but please, don't ever give up. God is with every one of us. God bless. We'll see you soon.